Hey there viewers, Mario here. Thank you for tuning in once again to Supermariodiagnostics. Today we've got a crank no start on a 1990 Mazda Miata MX-5. It's got 49,000 miles, it's a manual transmission, and let's confirm it. This was actually towed over. Sounds like pretty good compression strokes there. Anyway, this is, believe it or not, the first time I ever work on a Mazda Miata. So you and I will both be learning something from this one, so I hope it can be useful. I know it's funny that I say that, but in my 10 years total, 8 years professional of experience, I've never had to work on a Mazda Miata, believe it or not. And I mean 10 years because 2 of those years was basically on my own, and then I finally went into a shop, which hence my professional experience, whatever you want to call it, in-shop experience. So I've never had to work on a Mazda Miata. I hope this could be interesting. Let's get to it. I'm gonna set up a game plan and we'll go ahead and take it from there. Alright, so to start off our diag, I've got our spark plug tester connected here on cylinder number 1. And I also have a manual fuel gauge connected to our main fuel line right over there. So I figured, why not check 2 things at the same time? Maybe we could rule out cam and crank issues, or maybe we can rule out a fuel source issue, and see what happens. Alright fellas, so I have found my fuel pump relay. It's according to the information, it's underneath the dash, underneath the steering wheel. But to confirm, we've got our white and red, blue and red, we got a violet, light green, blue and red, and a black. So white and red, blue and red, light green, black, and violet. So we got everything we need. Now the one that, the quickest thing I could check right here is our blue and red that goes to power up our fuel pump. That's what I like about these kind of, like, you could call them loose relays. They're pretty accessible. So I got my power probe here and with my back probe, and I'm going to back probe my power feed to my fuel pump. And as you can see, we've got nothing, no continuity through the coil to ground, through the fuel pump coil to the ground. So we're gonna have to do some more testing. Now what I want to do is crank it and see if we get power. So let me just set this up somehow. Hopefully you guys can see it. How can we do this? I'm just gonna jam it in here somehow. Remember, we're back probed to the power feed to our fuel pump. The reason I have to do is it's a manual transmission. I have to press down the clutch. So here we go. As you can see, we got power. But one more time, let's do that one more time. Hopefully it doesn't fall on us. Oh my goodness. Well, you can hear it. I'm sure you'll believe me. So what does this tell us? This tells us that everything is fine with the relay. Everything's fine for the command of the relay. Obviously this car does not prime with the ignition on. It only runs the fuel pump when it's cranking and when it's running. And now we're just gonna go to the back to the fuel pump. Okay, viewers, so this is where our fuel pump lives. I want to see where I can set you guys up. And there we are. There's our connector. There's our blue and red and our black, and two smaller wires for our fuel level sensor. So let's do a couple of tests. I want to do a voltage drop test on the power and ground feed. Not exactly a voltage drop test, but a load replacement test. Let me see, I've got a couple things here. Got my light bulb. It's about 2 amps worth of load. And mind you, it's a little uncomfortable in here. Already I could see something that I don't like. See if you guys are getting a good view of this. I will zoom in if I have to. I see melted plastic here. That is our ground wire. But nonetheless, let's put in our pins. There's our power pin. Let me flip this over so that they don't contact each other. And what I'm gonna do is bypass the relay. That really went in too easily, to be honest with you, compared to the power one. But I'm gonna go ahead to the relay and bypass that. All right, I'm back. I hope you guys bear with me. This is a very small car, and the relay, as you saw, was underneath the driver's steering wheel. But I bypassed the relay, and the key is off right now, so I'm gonna go ahead and turn on the key. And as you can see, it works just fine. So I'm still worried about pin tension on this connector here. What I'm gonna do is a continuity test across the contacts of our fuel pump to see if that motor has continuity. So 1 second and I'll get my leads ready. You know what, maybe I'll just shoot some direct power to the fuel pump to see if it runs. If it does run, I'm already gonna be suspecting my pigtail there. Just a loose contact. That would explain that that melted connector there. You have loose contact, that creates arcing. Arcing creates heat. Heat creates resistance. They both feed each other, and it's like a frenzy, and then eventually it just starts melting. So we've got our power probe here. Make sure you guys can see this. It's a little tricky sometimes, but for the sake of the video and for the sake of testing things the right way, we're doing it. So let me just ground up my ground. I'm going to hook up my ground where it normally goes. Let me hook up my power first, since it's on the bottom. As you can hear, I have continuity when my leads stay in place at least. Okay, so I'm gonna bypass everything and shoot voltage to the fuel pump, and it runs. How good does it run? I couldn't tell you, but I know that it runs. So I'm gonna start it up for 10 seconds, see how our pressure is up front. And we'll take it from there. Let's go to the front. Just to confirm our pressure. Huh. No pressure. Just to do an overview of where we're at, I was at first I saw no pressure on the crank. I went to the relay, bypassed the relay, and nothing happened. No more pressure, right? I took power off of the relay to check for continuity through the coil of the fuel pump to ground. No continuity to ground. Come back to the fuel pump, and I find a pigtail that's melted, slightly melted, and a pin tension that I'm not comfortable with. For those two reasons already, and that lack of continuity, I'm already deciding to change that pigtail. So what I did was I wanted to rule out a blocked fuel filter. So here we are again, and I got my fuel gauge connected directly out of the fuel pump. So what I'm gonna do is bypass it, and just to check to see if it's a fuel filter issue. I know my gauge isn't locked up. All I'm looking for is quick pressure, and I've got it. Now I don't want to put the whole amount of pressure in there. I'm not locked up, but this tells me a couple of things. My fuel pump is doing its job. That's not good. My fuel pump is doing its job, but due to the fact that it was running against a blocked fuel filter, I'm going to suggest it. I'm not going to require it. I'm going to suggest a fuel pump due to the possible damage that has occurred. So that's where we're at. My recommendation is going to be a suggested fuel pump requiring a fuel filter and requiring this pigtail, because I do not like that arcing that's already taking place, that melting, and the pin tension, and the lack of continuity that I had to ground. And I already did my voltage drop test, as you guys have seen, with that test light, with that makeshift test light. So let's go ahead and try to get an approval on this, and we'll go ahead and film the job, and we'll take it from there. All right, so as of yet, the only thing I have an approval for is the fuel filter, believe it or not. And the connector seems to be a little rough to find. I suggested a junkyard part, but you know, the powers that be, maybe a junkyard part is not an option. There is a connector company that may be able to provide us a connector. The dealer wants somebody to sell the whole harness, so I'm a little stuck on that. I don't have a way to depin this those wires without obliterating the connector, so I don't want to take that risk and end up worse than where we started. So if I get any other approvals or any more updates, I will film that as well. But for now, we're just going to change out the fuel filter, and we'll take it from there. Okay, so I'm underneath the car and I'm taking a look at the fuel filter, and it looks like it's in pretty good shape. That means it's been changed recently, so that's where it kind of worries me. At this point, I'm going to remove that fuel filter, and if I see fuel coming out of that line to the fuel tank, to the fuel pump, I'm not going to worry about the hose and obviously that hose or blockage in that hose. If I don't see that, then well, I will start to wonder about a blockage in that hose. But at this point, I'm a little concerned that the fuel tank may be in such bad condition that, you know, putting a new fuel filter in there, it might just end up coming back one day, and it's not going to be pretty. So one thing to consider is the condition of the tank when you are dealing with a clogged fuel filter, especially one that's been changed recently. So, but let's get on with it anyway and see what we find. And there we got it, straight from the pump. Hopefully it doesn't continue. Let's see if I can plug this up. Whoops. Let's try that one more time. Okay, so our line to our fuel pump is good. Now we're gonna go ahead and check this one out. You guys can see that I'm compressing this line and there's fluid coming out. There's fuel coming out of the other side, so I'm starting to wonder. Starting out to look like the fuel filter. We may have a blockage in this line to our fuel rail. So I'm gonna go ahead and bring this down and disconnect our line up in the front and see if we could blow this air line out. I'm sorry, this fuel line out, because this fuel filter looks to be good. So it's one of those things that I'm kind of like, why didn't I just check it first? But you know, this is something that you just do not see at all. This may be the second time I've ever seen a blocked fuel line in my time working as a mechanic. So let's see. Let's bring down the car and do our testing. Alright fellas, real quick, I'm kind of starting to hurry up in this one. So I already blew out the line, but just so you guys can hear the hissing all the way to the back, it's unblocked right now. Whoops. I'm actually supposed to hit this line here. I was about to pressurize the rail. So here we go. Whoops. I hope you guys can hear it. Unblocked. I did hear a little pop on the way out, so it was definitely blocked. I'm still going to change that fuel filter, because for a blockage to happen in between the fuel filter and here, I don't like it. I'm just going to change out that fuel filter anyway. But it looks like that and the pigtail are the only two things that we're going to need. I'm suggesting the fuel pump anyway due to the blockage while running, but I do not believe the customer is going to do it. But at this point, we're going to see what we could do about that connector. Let's go ahead and change out this fuel filter, just for good measure. It is a little wet. Goodness, I should have just taken out the bolts. That's what happens when you try to save a minute. You waste two. Keep mind of the flow. Always go with the flow, guys. Always. Interesting. This is how it came. Oh, we're good. Mind playing tricks on me. This is coming from the fuel pump, flowing down. So we're good to go. I was about to come up with a different conclusion there. That was a close call. Not sure that it's a big deal, to be honest with you. I've never heard of anybody having problems from putting it in the wrong flow. Maybe there is consequences to that, but I'm not really, never seen them. I've never put it the wrong way, so. Oh, the fuel pump has a check valve. The fuel pump assembly has a check valve, and this thing just keeps flowing. That's another reason why we should change that fuel pump, but we're gonna do what the customer wants. I mean, as you can see, my fuel filter is a little off orientation. Let's go ahead and fix that. There you go. I guess we could call this a self-priming system. That thing is just flowing. Hey, I diagnose them. I do what the customer wants, but sometimes they don't, I don't know. It just doesn't pan out the way you think it does, so. I did my part. Sometimes you just gotta get on with life. You know? Did you catch that? Don't lie. Were you paying attention? Look at this. You guys were just about to let me go. Let's put that back where it belongs. Much better. Alright fellas, so where we are at this point is kind of a band-aid of a fix, because at the moment we are not able to attain a way to fix that connector. The customer hasn't even improved anything but the fuel filter at this point. We were going to change the fuel filter and saw a blockage in between the fuel filter and the fuel rail. We went ahead and unblocked that. Changed the fuel filter anyway because it was in between the rail and the fuel filter, so a bit of an anomaly there. Yes, I am a little disappointed that we couldn't do everything that I suggested, but management has been notified that this will be a comeback. I mean, let's face it, by what we saw in the connector, that's only a matter of time until this truck will come back. I'm sorry, this vehicle will come back in a tow truck due to lack of power to the fuel pump. It's not up to me, not everything is, but I think we got a little something to learn here. You know, this is the first time I work on this vehicle and this particular model, and you know what, I kind of like it, except for the extremely small space that we have to work with. But other than that, this is I like it, at least for this system that we're working on. But let's go ahead and start it up. You know, let's get something positive out of this. There is a priming procedure. We're done with the priming. I'm gonna go ahead and give this sucker a start. I'm kind of surprised that it started due to what we saw with the relay power feed to the fuel pump. We didn't have any continuity to ground, so I'm kind of surprised, but at the same time I'm kind of not. It's only a matter of time. Alright fellas, a quick update. The customer has declined any further repairs unfortunately, but we have to move on. So some things are not in my control. I've got no issues with it. It's the customer's car, it's not my car. If it were mine, we would have done all those things, but it's not. So we're just gonna leave it at that. I know some of you guys may find that troubling, but like I said, we can't control everything. Some things are out of our hands, and who knows, maybe the customer will be able to attain that connector. We'll be more than glad to install their part. But for now, we're just gonna leave it at that. I appreciate each and every single one of you guys and girls, and I hope that if you like what you see, you hit like and leave a comment. Let me know what you thought was done right, done wrong. What would you have liked to have seen? Any ideas you may have had during this? Maybe we can get enlightened by one of you guys that are very familiar with Miatas. I would say this is a pretty good experience, considering it was my first time working on this particular vehicle. The only not so great experience was the fact that we couldn't follow through with a complete repair, but I think one day we will. And I'm not sure what else I forgot to mention there, but if I did forget something, please do let me know. I don't want people to think that I'm like absolutely perfect. I'm not, and I don't know everything there is to know. So hope we all have learned from this one. Thanks for tuning in to Super Mario Diagnostics. Until next time.